Welcome, everyone, to the Designer Show, show number 101. Can you believe it? So, yeah, this has been fun. We've been just enjoying putting these on. So, on today, Rene, or not Rene, John and Robin are off doing some other things today. So, they won't be on the show, but we've got Rene and Kevin are joining us, and our special guest, Jennifer Milius, is here with us today. We're going to talk a little bit about some leadership things, which Jen's got a great story, so I'm really excited about that. We don't have any big commercials for anything that we've got going. We do have some courses that we're working on that will be coming up soon. Kevin's going to be putting together the Art of Design course. We've been talking about some really cool things that we're looking forward to doing, and one of these days I'm going to pin Rene down and get him to do some advanced courses. So, because I know you guys want to pick his brain, so he's got lots to spare, so he'd be good to go. Anyway, let me just show you real quickly. I wanted to give you just a smidgen of a introduction to Jennifer. I met Jennifer only about 4 months ago, something like that. She's part of another group that I belong to, so we've been talking ever since. It's been great to know her. Jen has written a book. You know it's a verb, right? And I just finished it actually, and actually listened to it while I kind of was going through the book at the same time. Great way to learn, by the way. Outstanding. So you guys, Jen's going to talk a little bit about this today, so you'll be able to find out more about that. And if you're streaming on the page here with us today, let me show my screen. And I'll talk about this again in a little bit more. Share screen.
Got a comment here already.
Yeah. Okay. What do you got?
Where do I find you on YouTube?
I think that's for Jen.
Where do you find Jen on YouTube?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll make sure we answer that before the end of the day. In fact, Jen, if you want to go in and put a comment in there with your YouTube, I can look it up while you're talking with Kevin. So
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
So that'll be no problem. And so we'll go through that. You can. You probably have a link on your website too, I would assume. So if we go to your website, I haven't necessarily looked here, but if you don't, you'll get one added. All right. So cool. So that's just a mini commercial. And again, I want to talk a little bit more about this. The content of this book is excellent. And
thanks.
It reminds me all the time. And one of the main reasons I wanted to have Jennifer on the show today was that everybody that watches this show, whether you're a contractor, you're a designer, you work for a designer, it doesn't really matter what you do. The bottom line is you're all leaders. And because of what you do, you're going through this process of helping people redesign their house, new kitchen, new whatever it is. And you're working with trade partners, you're working with employees. Whether you own the company or not doesn't matter. You're leading the process that goes into all of that. So anything that we can do to learn more about how to be better leaders is really important. So kudos to you for being here and watching this. I hope you'll get a lot of information out of here. And you can use some of that information in your business to create better designs, better projects for all the people that you do work with. And bottom line, the bottom line is, as a good leader, you're going to be able to support your family a lot better because you're going to do a better job better at your job. So anyway, welcome. Please let us know in the comments if you have questions. Let us know where you're from or what you're up to. It's always nice to hear from everybody. Herbert, welcome to the show today. Where do you find you? We'll get that link for you in just a little bit. Welcome from sunny Virginia. Hey, Doug, how are you? And I believe, Jen, you don't live too far from Virginia.
I'm in Virginia.
Yeah, there you go. So that's pretty darn close. In fact, I think you guys might see Jen at our next summit next March in the Outer Banks because she lives
like an hour from there.
An hour from there. That's pretty close. So anyway, welcome. And so with that, what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Kevin. Kevin is going to start with a little 10-minute segment. This is kind of our new format where Kevin gets to talk for 10 minutes. We'll try to keep it to 10 minutes, Kevin. Okay.
Yeah. That's been one of my most difficult things, is to try to figure out how to only talk for 10 minutes.
Well, if we just keep it one sentence, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
The long sentence.
All right.
So Kevin, you're going to talk a little bit about your fall from a rewarding, high-paying career and subsequent regrowth as an entrepreneur and industry leader in the residential design and build space. I love that title that you sent me.
That's almost like you read that.
No, not me. Yes, I did, because I could never remember that. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you. In fact, we're going to make you a solo layout, and you get to chat to everybody. So have at it, Kevin.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. For those of you who have met me, it's good to see you again, even if it's virtual. For those who haven't, I'm looking forward to meeting you someplace down the road. So thank you for joining and participating today. Because of the topic, the subject matter of Jen's talk, in the idea of leadership, I talked a little bit with Jen in a previous conversation about where she came from and the similarities between where she spent probably the majority of her career and where I spent the majority of mine, which was in the corporate world. That for me was it was a very rewarding thing. I was very good at it. I was very well rewarded for it. It was all of the things that somebody could ask for, except for the passion. For me, it was something that I was good at, not necessarily something I loved. And that question always comes to mind, usually over a late night cocktail in a fire pit when you're contemplating, is it about becoming good at the things you love, or is it about becoming in love with the things you're good at? And for me, I spent the first 20 years of my career in the latter. I was very good at it, but I would find myself a little bit empty when it came to the passion. So when the world changed on me, which was in May of 2001, and for those of you old enough to remember it, that was a disastrous moment in the technology world because the dot-com bubble burst. I was at that time at the pinnacle of geekdom. I had risen to a level of abstraction that was kind of remarkable in that I was advising top tier CEOs around the world about the future of this thing called the internet and how they could monetize different aspects of it. I was an internet network intelligence architect. That was a catchy term, but it captures everything that was what I did. So in that, if you break that down, obviously I was involved in the internet in 2001, which was relatively early. And I was in an area that was exploring what you could figure out in the internet, meaning what could we tell people about what's actually happening in this communication that takes place between machines. So for people who run giant server farms and for companies that are trying to figure out how to exploit the new environment, the idea there was it was all about marketing and how could we target market. That's a new concept, imagine that. So that was great until the dot-com bubble burst and everyone lost their jobs, including me. So in one 5-minute phone call, I went from having a great career to having no career. And I spent the next 5 months trying desperately to find a place in the world that somehow mimicked what I had done for the last 20 years. And it was a devastating time. It was very difficult until I finally gave up and changed course and thought, who am I and what am I and how can I use that to become what I can sell and put food on the table for my wife and my 2 young children. So although it was a very desperate time and followed by 3 very difficult years of trying to figure out how to grow into a new position, it was very rewarding in that I was able to overcome those things, return to something that I was passionate about, which is designing and building. And I'd done that since I was a kid, helping with my parents' rental houses and learning to do everything there. And I had won several awards as a kid for doing things well. And I very carefully and slowly went from knocking on doors and asking if I could clean their deck, this coming from someone who in 2000 was making a six-figure income, and suddenly I was humbled and knocking on doors and asking if I could clean their deck. So that was possibly a time where everybody should weep a little bit and grab a Kleenex and feel sorry for me. But it was actually the birth of a new career. And the new career became entrepreneurial, where the decks became fences and the fences became gazebos and the gazebos became enclosures. And as it went on, I managed to continue to think in terms of what can I do? How can I employ people to help me? How can I grow this and become something in this new world? Ultimately, it's served me well. And I've done things like won national awards and been an HGTV winner and things like that. They're really nice feathers in my cap. But it all comes down to that thing I was thrown into. I didn't go in by choice. I went in by circumstance. The challenges were real and they were difficult steps to overcome. I'm sure you guys can relate. I'm sure some of you out there are singing the same song, and some can relate in some way. But in all of that, the successes and the rewards were significant achievements and significant aspirations, as well as accomplishments that I can only be thankful for, that put me in a position to be able to be talking to you today and hopefully be able to help some of you in your journeys. With that, I'd love to tell you all about my very long story later, but because I'm limited to 10 minutes, that's about all my time for today. So do stay in contact with me, stay with the show, contact me directly if you would like. I'd love to speak to each one of you. But right now, I would like to introduce Jen and her position. So, Jen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. One thing to get us started is that Dan has just finished your book, and I'm sorry, but I have not. So I'm going by what Dan said when he said that I'm supposed to ask you about Rats Downtown.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you all for having me. And thank you for the question, because Rats Downtown was actually something that my co-author, Wayne, really wanted to include in our book. And it is an acronym for respect all, trust some, do no harm. And so the idea is really about like being at the crux of leadership. When you think of that, it's about people. It's about taking care of people. So when you are coming from that mindset, you are truly taking care of people. You are looking at your employees or your contractors, those who you're working with, even if they're not an employee. You're looking at your clients and your customers, and how can you respect all, trust some, and do no harm to no one. You don't want to hurt anyone with what you're doing. So you're keeping all of that in mind. And it's something that you're doing with each action and each engagement. It's not one and done.
That's
Cool. Yeah. I wanted you to ask that question because I found that intriguing. It's great, easy to remember. That's really cool. And it's so important. It's so important.
It is. It certainly, covers three things that I believe in, and it wraps it all up into one little memorable statement. So love it.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
we could rename that Rabbits Downtown. So
Rabbits are good. So I said a little bit about my background, where I came from the corporate world and then transitioned into this new world. And conversations that you and I have had, you had a similar background before you launched into your current career. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you. So I worked in corporate for 20 years and then started my business in 2014. So this August would be 9 years as an entrepreneur. But in corporate, I worked in different industries. I worked in healthcare, I worked in publishing, and I worked in heavy manufacturing. And majority of the time in heavy manufacturing, I spent time on the construction team working with the team who would be responsible for the refueling complex overhaul for the aircraft carriers. And that was
definitely heavy industry.
Yeah, it was a really phenomenal experience to be able to do that. And my job was predominantly in that space, and really throughout the whole experience was being a bridge, helping people with communications, helping people present themselves, present messages to best represent themselves and their company, and connecting with their team and throughout the entire value stream, if you will. So thinking about how you can work with everyone who has a direct input into what you're doing versus just your one particular piece. So
I love the concept of the bridge. The visual concept of the bridge. As a consultant, you're not necessarily only talking to the one individual. You're talking to the individual and essentially everyone that they associate with to better help them bridge those gaps. So nice.
Yeah. Thank you. I looked at it that basically, I had different roles within each organization for sure, but really, we were all working for the same company and we're all on the same team. And our goal was to provide the best result that we could for that customer. And by extension, it's clients. So sometimes the person buying isn't always the person using, and you want to be thinking of both of those in the same space. And when you remember, we're all in this together versus saying, oh, wait, well, that's a whole nother person's area, not mine, and it's their fault or what have you that this isn't working. No, we're all here. We're all working to the same common goal. Let's work together to get to that solution.
It was wonderful to talk to you about your story. And when we chatted last week, and you talked about, you really didn't know much about shipbuilding, but that really wasn't your job to do the shipbuilding. And the comment you made about your job was to get the rocks out of the way.
Yeah.
That was really a great comment. And that's really true for a lot of what we do in our industry. As a good leader, you're going to, do a good set of plans. To me, a good set of plans is getting a rock out of the way, because now you got something that you can follow. And, if you don't have a good set of plans, you're going to be up against these boulders all the time trying to figure out what the hell you're supposed to do. So, if you want to use that as an analogy, great. But to me, that makes a lot of sense. So I just thought I'd throw that comment in there.
And to your point, when I started at the company, I started in engineering, and I was not an engineer. I was not a designer. I was a person with a communications background and a master's in business. And so my job was I would listen to my team and say, okay, I hear what you're asking me. I realize the technical pieces, but then I would ask a few leading questions to say, this is what I think you need from me. Am I on the right track? Got it. I know how to work through this and solve that problem. And that's how I continue to show up in that business. So when I was working in process excellence or working down in the on the program for the Abraham Lincoln, the execution team, even, those were all the things that I did. I would sit with my generals or my construction team saying, I know I don't have that particular skill set, but I can remove rocks. Help me understand what's going on, and I can do that.
The thing that you're talking about really is finding that core strength that you have within you that can allow you to cross barriers, really use that strength in a lot of different capacities. One of the things that I found really interesting, and I asked you about, so now I'm going to ask you because others were probably doing the same thing, is that, and you know where I'm going, don't you? When I met you and we talked about your ideas of leadership and the book and all those kinds of things, I asked you, so how does your website, which really references how to inspire women to write a book about their world and their lives and their journeys, how does that bring you back into this and the book? So tell me how all that transition and where did the book come from?
I love this question. I'm so glad you asked it because really it is a reflection of growth throughout, honoring yourself and tapping into, okay, what are my strengths and what are my abilities, and following those things that light me up too. So all of those skill sets were kind of brought to bear in corporate. I didn't realize I had some of those until corporate. But then when I made the leap to start my business, I started with children's books. I started writing about my 2 children's books, and then it evolved into coaching because I did so much coaching, so much leadership coaching or leadership development throughout my entire corporate career. I was the person who always had a chair beside me, and somebody was in it saying, hey, could you help me with this? Or, hey, how might I go about that? And it didn't matter what level of the company they were in. It mattered that they were trying to create a better result, drive a better connection, to bring that vision to bear even more so. And I could be of service. So that's what I did. And sometimes it was also helping that person realize the gifts that they had were already with them. They just needed some help unlocking them and communicating them.
And there's that message in the website.
Yes, because that's really the golden theme, if you will, of what I'm about. It's really helping people to remember the greatness, the light that they have within them, and to be able to show up and own that. So remembering your skill sets and communicating them and owning that message, whether you're in a meeting with your client and you're sitting at that table, so you own the space and you trust that you have what it takes to be there, or if you don't know, you're asking questions so that you can learn, so you can be a better steward of what you're trying to do. It's all a part of all of that, really. And so as my business grew, I had met someone who also wrote children's books, also was into leadership, and we were both running 2 different leadership podcasts. And he had been listening to mine and said, hey, what do you think about us co-authoring a book? Thus created, it's a Verb, right? Which went through several iterations on book title, for that matter.
I love that one, by the way.
I love that. It really is true for us, because we looked at that as lead is a verb, and it's something that you must do each time, each engagement. And if you don't get it right, guess what? You get to do it again, because you are constantly growing and constantly refining. And so really, it's just all evolved over time. It's
been my experience that I know when I was hiring people, I had a dear friend who was an engineer who was out of work. He was very good at what he did, but he hadn't had a job in a while, and he was looking. And I talked with him about, why don't you just join me? Why don't you just work with me? And he just very quickly said, Kevin, I can't handle the risk. I can't take that. That's not something that I need to work for someone. My question then to you would be, I think some people, I don't know if the term born leaders is fair, but I think some people see their place in leadership, and some people see their place following. And I think both of them are very, very good places. But I also think that, for instance, for me, I was a follower until I was forced into a position of being on my own and being entrepreneurial, and then I became a leader. So do you believe, or can you expound on, do you think that there are people that are born leaders and born followers, and then there are people who want to really change that and move into a leadership role?
And Doug, I'm going to add to that. Doug has a great question here too that kind of goes along with that a little bit. The hard part of a big organization is the politics involved in that. And you might have people intentionally trying to hurt other people, or maybe not even intentionally. That's what they do. So I think that kind of goes a little bit hand in hand there.
Yeah. So I don't see a born follower or a born leader. I think they're actually a relationship that, in order to be a good leader, you must be a good follower. You have to. I believe that when you have a greater gift, you have a greater responsibility. And so you do well with what you have, and then more is given, but then more is expected. So it's something that you continually cultivate and grow. Now, there might be some innate strengths that you have that you can't help but be there, but you still have to hone them. You still have to use them and put them to work, because if you don't use them, well, they're not being developed. So I think anyone has the chance to become a leader, because quite frankly, if you are talking with someone and you may not have the title of leader, but you have people who listen to what you are suggesting and buy into it and try something different, or you're the person who seems to be able to pull people together and get them to kind of understand how to do something and get them on board, you're leading. You just might not have recognized it. So I think that sometimes we expect a title versus recognizing you already have some of those skill sets.
I've always, I've had a belief throughout my career, especially in a position where I was in the position of following rather than leading. But I've had a belief throughout my career that you can accomplish miracles as long as you don't care who gets the credit.
Right.
I think that there is there's an opportunity for leadership from below. I think that there are people who just lead as a matter of being part of the team, and because of their personalities, because of the way that they approach things and their interaction with other people, they are leading even when they may not even know they're leading. But you can recognize it. You can see those attributes. So somebody who's listening that may be part of I think we as a society are trained to think that leadership has to do with climbing the corporate ladder. I don't think that's true. I think leadership has to do with your ability to guide and persuade and shift and change the things in the world and the perspectives around you and influence what you can. Are you with me on that or no?
Kevin, I'm going to add something too. I was a project manager for every company I've ever worked for. And I don't think it was because I wanted to be a project manager. That wasn't it. It was, I had kind of a holistic approach to how things ran, and and my take on it was largely equity based. It was having the people around me understand what their worth is to a company and how their actions directly relate to everybody else's benefit or not, right? And explaining that and pulling that and gathering these resources together suddenly became a family where we're all benefiting each other. So it was just a matter of, in my mind, I had this structure. I understood how things were working. I didn't want to be a leader, but I just started talking to the person next to me and trying to get them on board. Let's all get towards the common goal. And, those people that just want to climb, that's not necessarily the approach I would take. I don't know. Check your thoughts on that, Jen.
Actually, I love what you both are saying. So first off, when I hear a title, I do think a title it does sort of quote help in a sense, but it's only because the organization said so. But that person in the job has to earn the trust of those who they're working with. And just because that person became my boss and thus in theory my leader, that doesn't mean that we automatically have this relationship that says, I buy into that. It means that now we have to work at this together. And you as the leader, it's incumbent upon you to help those who you are leading to feel safe with you. They want to feel safe with you. And Rene, you were talking about being a project manager. I'm with you. I was too. For large trade shows, if you think about the trade shows like those, like the bath show, the kitchen shows that you're talking about, where you have a big booth and you've paid money to be at this booth and you're going to be there to represent your business, to get new leads and what have you. I ran trade shows like that. I help people to manage booths like that. And no one worked for me. I was responsible for the entire project to make everything happen and have it a successful event. And it was one of those that was an A or F. There was no C type situation on these. You either got it right or you failed miserably, and it didn't matter. And what was required from me was to have everyone who had some kind of connection to it buy in that this was important to do. And these were the takeaways that were important for those who were attending. So they understood the so what. And my job was to help get people on board with what that was, so that they could not just get on board with attending, but supporting in some way when needed. That was leadership. It wasn't necessarily the title that said, oh, by the way, you're the project manager for this event. Great. It was my job to help create the interest, the enthusiasm, and the willingness to participate.
For our listeners, the idea of grappling with that term, leadership, or your position, or whatever it may be, it's really something that I think you struggle with throughout your career. You may at some point find your place and decide you're in your happy home and that's it. But I think a lot of times you're kind of questioning, why am I here and what can I do? And sometimes you're taking more of a pessimistic approach, like I can't seem to do anything. I seem to be failing at what I'm trying to do. I know this is just a sideways comment, but I'm trying to spring it into something for you to talk about, which is that I was one time positioned with somebody. He was absolutely the most negative person I have ever met in my life, bar none. I couldn't believe that they would put me with him because I'm the kind of the eternal optimist. So when I approached my superiors and asked them why in the world that they would position me with him, when I'm the way I am, they said, because you're the way you are. They wanted me in that position, which was an equal position to him, but they wanted me there to help influence and balance the negativity that came from the other guy, who was also very talented, just really negative. So when one day he came in and banged on my wall and told me he was going to kick my ass about something, I looked at him and I said, "You're going to kick my ass?" And I said, you got to look at it this way. It can't get worse. And he said, "It can always get worse." So there was a guy that pushed past the thing. So when you're talking to people on the call who may be in a position where they're in a team and they're grappling with similar either insecurities or contemplations about how to interact with the team, what are your suggestions? What are your thoughts about that?
The first thing I would think about is, one, understand what each person on the team's strengths are. Each person has their own gifts, talents, abilities, and gifts, and they're going to be different from yours. They might be similar, but they're still going to be a little different. So when you really understand what each person's abilities are and how they might fit into the bigger picture, that is a big win, because then you can look and say, okay, are they being utilized? Are those skill sets being utilized? Does that person feel like they are really contributing? Because it could be that they may not. It could be that they may not feel like what they're doing matters because they're not seeing how that makes a difference. But if you can see it and you can make that connection because you can communicate it, tell them. I think that communication is so important. And it's not just about you talking to them. It's about you actively listening. So that means you're really listening with your heart. You're listening not just for sound, you're listening with your whole body. You're paying attention to nonverbal language. You're paying attention to all of those nuances so that you can actually understand what that person is communicating. And then you're able to come at it from okay, how might we all come together here? Because if everybody was like us, that would be really boring. I'm just saying. I mean, and side note, I've even talked about this with little kids when I go talk about picture books. I will say, my one cat Einstein, he has one little personality, and my one cat Mushu, her personality is a little different, and they each show up as their own little personalities in their own books. And if everybody was like Einstein, that'd be boring. And if everybody was like Moo, that'd be boring. You need both. You need all of it, and understand and appreciate the differences, because it's actually those things that will create a much better result.
So are you saying?
Let me just add one thing real quick, Kevin. Kind of on that whole broad topic about listening. What's one of the best things designers do with their clients to get answers? Anybody?
Ask leading questions.
Hey, very good. That's what a good leader does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And they let everybody that's involved in the project answer those questions, and then we can talk about them. If the leader just comes in and just dictates everything that they're going to do, you have to do it like this, and do blah, 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 blah. It's hard to get buy-in from people.
I think one of the most powerful attributes of someone in any position, and therefore by nature a leader, is to ask the questions. I think you are way stronger as a questioner than you are as a dictator or answerer. So I know I try to use that approach all the way from an interview with a client to a coworker, to a subcontractor, to a tradesman, to whatever else. You don't really gain anything by walking in and I mean, the question's got to be something other than "What the hell?" So
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
take it a little different approach, like, oh, well, I wouldn't have thought of doing it that way. That's interesting.
Right.
Can you tell me why you went that way? One, you've got their attention on something that you may be trying to direct them on, and two, you might find out that their way was better. So it's a pretty interesting approach.
Another thing to that is when you hear someone describing something, whether it's when you're working on a project, you're working through a design, for instance, and you see the challenge, or you're hearing a client say something, and even if all you say is, and what else? Or is there something more you want to add? That second part, that extra part, actually helps you to unpack a little deeper. There might be something else happening there. And because you've said, and what else? And what else is coming up for you? Or what else are you thinking with that? That gives them a little more space to elaborate if they do. And that's almost kind of driving down a little bit deeper for you to get a little bit more information that might just be the piece you needed.
Or the other side of that is you might find out that there is nothing else, in which case you've defined the end of that, what you need to satisfy. So
Right.
it works in both ways.
Exactly. You got information that you needed.
Yes. Yeah. So all of that's really fascinating. I could just go on and chat with you all day about these things. Are there things specifically that you want to make sure we're covering in your time today?
I'm just really glad to be having this conversation. It's really fun to me because I think that when we get to talk about things that help build people up, I think that that's a good thing because it's a ripple effect that you can have. And so, one of the things is to remember that when you are working with your person, when you are with your client, working with your team or what have you, to be present with them. So actively listening is one, but that requires you to be present, really be present. So not on your phone, not at the table with your head down, with the book in your hand or something against the wall, like you're not interested, actively engaging, actively being present, because that communicates that you are interested in being part of that solution. Even if you might not agree on exactly how to get there, it means that you are actively a part of it and you genuinely care, because really you're in the people business. I know you're in the construction, the design business, but you're really in the people business because you're helping people. And
I think we have a particular challenge today with the use of technology. Now, when you're glancing at your watch, you're not necessarily checking the time. It used to be that if you glanced at your watch, it sent a signal to people that you either felt like their time was done or that you were on the move. That you had something that was more important than them, and that becomes a challenge to a conversation. I don't care whether it's a client or whether it's a business partner. It sends a message that
Right.
something else is more important than you are. Now, you could just as easily be hitting the record button on your watch to catch something that's important in the conversation, or you could be looking at your phone to take a note or to look up a phone number or to give them information. So how do you mix technology in the world of guiding people and collaboration and what's the word I'm thinking of? Persuasion and things like that. How do you mix technology in there adequately and professionally and the way that you hope it's going to come across?
I would communicate it. So if I felt like I needed to use my phone for a note, use my phone to communicate something, or grab my iPad, for instance, right there, hold on a second. Let me show you, let me bring this in. I'd like to capture this. Are you okay with me recording this? So I've communicated. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I'm not just recording on the fly and then they're going, what are you doing? And did you just record me? Just tell them, communicate, because they might go, you know what? I really appreciate that. Can I get a copy when you're done? Absolutely. I'm happy to. But if they don't know what you're doing by saying, by asking, hey, do you mind if I do this? Or, hey, wait, let me go do this. You're leading by example. You're communicating what you are doing, and you're showing what you would like done as well.
I think I completely agree. And I think the other thing that communication does is you have defined the use and the fact that you may be interrupted. These things may happen. I try to let people know that I'm going to do my best to give you my undivided attention, but I do use technology to sometimes find the answers to things that you're thinking about. So if I happen to glance at my smartwatch or my phone, it's probably not because I'm ignoring you. In fact, you've got my attention. I'm just trying to help you get to the next step. So sometimes it just defines the parameters of conversation as well.
Yes. And checking in, saying, okay, hold on. You said it's just something that demonstrates that you are respecting the fact that you're still in front of someone else, whether it's through a virtual situation or in person. You're still remembering this is what's important. I'm still trying to support as best as I can with if I need that other piece, but by communicating and saying this is what's going on. It's amazing sometimes how something that seems simple to us or we don't always remember to do,
Well,
even saying thank you for your time, or thank you for this information, thank you for this call. Saying thank you is helpful.
Marnie Vincent posted that that body language is just as important as what you say.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
It communicates a lot.
It does.
Yeah. I've been in those meetings with contractors that you trying to go over things on a project and say, oh, got a call. Hang on. Oh, I got to take care of this message. Oh, let me go take care of this. People interrupt all the time. And it's just like, come on, man. My time's valuable too.
Right.
Yep.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point.
Or the other thing, which depending on your gender, is a kiss of death, or at the very least, it's a total disregard. Which is that if you're in a group of three, make sure that if you're the one talking, talk to both of the other two. If you don't, and you find it in typical gender biases and things, but you also find it just if there's an obvious person taking control of the conversation, therefore you only talk to them, then you're doing an injustice to the other person. You're sending another message that is a negative as well.
Okay, well, let's go to your list for a second here.
Okay.
You had sent me.
Yes.
And you had some great questions on here.
Oh, good.
And one of them just pops out to me, and that would be, Jen, what advice would you offer emerging leaders who are just starting out in the industry, or people that have been doing it for a while and could use a little help?
Totally understand. I appreciate that. Engage in solution-focused conversations. When you're focused on the solution, what we're trying to achieve, it's not about finger pointing. It's not, well, so-and-so didn't give me this information, or, if so-and-so had just gotten this, or this system, this software is not cooperating, or what have you. Whatever the other distractions are, just let's focus on what we're trying to accomplish, because that's actually what we're driving towards. So not finger point, but focus on the right direction, or on the conversations on the direction for be solution focused. Another one that I know we've talked about throughout the conversation, but it bears repeating, is identifying positive skill sets from every person, from the people that you're working with. There's something positive about every person that you are working with, even those who you might find a little cantankerous. There's positive skill sets, there's positive attributes that people bring. And when you see them and when you acknowledge them, you will unlock something within that person, and you will get more because they feel seen and they feel valued and they feel heard. So just by you taking the time to get to know that person and seeing that and recognizing it, that person feels seen and heard, and you have uncovered information that might help you further down the road or with the project that you're working on, because now you have, again, more information to work with. And remember, it's okay to ask questions.
And it's one of the things I like about your book, is that you give lots of questions to ask at the beginning and the end of each chapter. I like your honesty check. Thank you. You listen chapter and ask those questions. So it's really helpful. If you were just thinking, look at the list of questions. Oh, I don't know. It's just it's a good reminder, good checklist.
Thank you.
I get distracted by anything under the sun, so getting asked questions is a great way to keep me in it. Because I mean, this can happen, and I'll be like, squirrel.
I love it. I get it too. But to your point about the end of chapter honesty check questions, when Wayne and I put the book together, that was something that he had expressed a specific interest in including. It was important to have those questions. And I was bought in. I loved the idea. And so as we put those questions together, our intention was so that it didn't really matter where you were along your journey. It mattered that at that point in time, when you read that particular chapter, it's how you answered those questions for yourself. So when you go back and you reread it a month later, 6 months later, 2 years later, you're in a different position. You're in a different mindset. Now, how do you answer those questions? Because now you've grown.
Yeah. And Marnie has a good comment here too. Each of us has to find out what works for us individually. And you just mentioned that changes over time.
It does.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
Yes.
yeah. So
I know. I think it's important to recognize also that being someone who is unbelievably good at what you do doesn't necessarily make you a good leader. There's some really strong recognized industry leaders that were a pain in the ass to work with. It might be. It might be Tiffany, or it might be Frank Lloyd Wright, or it might be Frank Gehry. Who knows? But they may have been fantastic industry leaders, but are industry leaders necessarily good leaders of people?
It depends, because to me, the skill set that's required to do the technical piece, whatever the technical piece is, whether it's learning a software, whether it's the drafting, the designing, whether it's, quite honestly, communication is a skill set. Understanding the technical pieces to put together the written word, there are technical pieces for it. When you understand those skill sets, that's one thing. Then leadership skills, they're different skills. And they are used to help further strengthen and leverage the technical skills. But they are still different skills to have. It's another form of communication. It's decision making. It's recognizing, it's knowing when to take action and knowing when to stop and, if you will, think. It's all of those different pieces that kind of go into play.
I am loving this conversation, really. I mean, I could go on, but I'm checking the time, and I'm wondering, Dan, do we need to wrap up about now? How are you feeling about it?
At this point, yeah, we're getting close. I would love it if we have some great comments here, people. Thank you for putting those in. And if you have some questions for Jen, now would be a great time to post them. She's got a little bit of knowledge about this topic. So
and she's not afraid to talk, so.
Kind of like you, Kevin. Kind of like all of us, actually.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good at talking.
We're all good.
So yeah, some questions from listeners would be wonderful.
Well, I'll ask from one of yours. What do you see the future of leadership in the industry, in the construction industry? How do you think the emerging technologies and other trends will shape the role of leaders moving forward?
And the background of that question, the reason for that question is the onset and onslaught of artificial intelligence. So how do you think that the emerging technology is going to play into the future of leadership?
My perspective is, with at least AI, I realize that there might be some benefit to that, because you might work a little bit faster. You might glean some ways to phrase something or think through something. But from my perspective, I write every piece out that I do, 100% me, 100% human. Every piece, everything that I write is 100% me. So I would rather have my intelligence moving through my communication. If it helps to create an inspiration, that's one thing. But from my perspective, I would rather use what I'm bringing to the world from that standpoint. So I think it's really however you choose to look at that, but recognize there's different pros and cons, but not to discredit what you are doing and how you can strengthen and communicate your own message.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think that that artificial intelligence remains artificial. The possibility is mind-boggling, and I could see a time because good decisions and bad decisions are made at the same time, around the planet. So I could see a time where we're reporting to a machine. I could see a time where it seems the conversation is being discussed with a machine. I think that the ability for us to comprehend and deliver a human result remains a huge advantage for humanity. So it's going to be an interesting move when the roles of corporations are shifting to embrace artificial instead of real. But it'll be really interesting to see where it takes us personally.
I think the first major move is going to be some kind of AI-based, getting you to a response group that you resonate with for questions that you might have. So it just pulls resources of possible responses to situations you might be in. And I think that's where it's maybe going to benefit us. So
yeah.
Coming around the corner.
Well, it's here. I mean, it's here. I use it now to ask it questions and carry on a conversation with it. My car went to hell. So I had questions about how to fix something, and I just kept asking it different questions. Still didn't get an answer to what I was looking for, but I zeroed in on a few things, which was kind of cool. But it gave me some really good information that
were any of them it's time to buy a new car?
I'm almost to that point, but it might be. It's a timing chain issue. Maybe.
Oh yeah, it's time to buy a new car.
Maybe. I don't know yet. They can't check this time. Whatever. Long freaking story. But yeah, gotta love it. So anyway, but yeah, AI, it's here. We just get used to it and use it wisely. So,
Dan, did you see any other questions that you wanted to jump in with on that?
Oh golly, you had a ton of them in there.
I know. You could just point at one.
Yeah.
I'm curious what this is. Anybody know what this one is? I've never heard of this.
I don't know what that is.
Neither do I.
I'll look that up in the background.
There you go. I didn't even notice that one. Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd the questions go? One more. Let's see. How have you balanced the demands of leadership with other responsibilities and priorities in your life, such as family, hobbies, and other interests? How do
work-life balance?
Life balance.
Well, I think if you, I'm sure you've heard the analogy before of, you have the big rocks, you have the medium rocks, you have the little rocks. And if you took all the little rocks and you poured them into like this one big, you have well, pretend this doesn't have water in it. But if I poured all little rocks in here and then tried to fit big rocks in, the big rocks would never fit. So many big rocks would be left out, and the medium rocks probably wouldn't, but they wouldn't all fit. So what you would want to do, put the big rocks in, then the medium, and then start filling in with the little, shake it a little bit, add a little bit more, shake it type of thing, so that all of the pieces kind of come into play. Well, what are your big rocks? What are those things that are really important to you to prioritize first to you? So, sometimes you might need to work on a weekend, depending upon what that project is. Is it every weekend? Or is it one of those things where you say, no, I do my best to make sure that from Saturday to Sunday is family time specifically, and I keep work Monday through Friday. Maybe that's something. Or you say, I don't take phone calls after a certain period of time because that's time I spend with my family, my spouse, however, or I do something for me, just as important to that piece. I mean, my husband is an avid runner, and he gets up at dark 30 to go run before he goes to work. So I am not an avid runner, so I do not do that. I prioritize sleep, but he prioritizes working out for that, and that's okay. So to me, I think that's, you know what's important, and you prioritize that, and you will feel it when it's a little out of balance. And sometimes there might be a little bit of that, but if it feels too much, you need to back up and reevaluate and make some changes, and that's okay.
Cool. We're about out of time, so I just want to real quickly, we'll post these links on the website as well, but if you're on the page, the streaming page on my website, Chief Experts, and you scroll down, you'll see a few links here. One will take you to Jen's website, which you can learn a little bit more about her. One of the things that you'll find interesting when you get there is she talks about children's books, and which I think is really fascinating. But if you dig a little deeper, head over to the, here's how you get to her show that she does on YouTube, the Tough Fish Show. She has her services listed here. So she does coaching, leadership coaching. So Jennifer, you want to talk about that a little bit real quick?
Sure. So one of the things I've done in my business is also developmental edit. So helping people with their message, with their communication. Predominantly, it's been in books from a developmental edit, but it's the same premise of communicating. But with coaching, I really believe in helping people to own their space at the table, to remember their value, to remember what they have that they have, and to let that inner greatness shine, let that inner greatness show up. Because when you do that, everyone benefits. Your clients benefit, your customers benefit, your family and your friends benefit, and you do, because you feel that joy, and that will shine through in your work. And so I love working with people to help them do that.
And you do offer a 30-minute free consultation if you
Absolutely.
want to talk. So
Absolutely.
If you're looking for some help on your leadership skills or in your company, reach out to Jennifer. That'd be awesome. You can also check out Jennifer's book. It's on YouTube. It's you can get it in Kindle, audiobook, and paperback, of which I've gotten the audiobook and paperback, which is a really good way to go. Good book, good read, nice little workbook to have around when you want to hone your leadership skills. So I highly recommend checking that out. And let's see, what else did I have on my site here? Work with Jen, book, learn more about her. So there you go. Jennifer, thank you very much for being here. Actually, we do have 4 minutes left, for Pete's sake. We don't have to say goodbye quite yet.
But still, thank you for having me.
We're usually running long, so now we.
I know this is really odd for us to.
Well, let me say this: you had Kevin, you had mentioned something earlier about the friend you had with the concern about taking a risk, and one of the things that if you think about it, every time in leadership, have you always been successful? Has every single thing that you've ever done been successful? Absolutely not. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've tried something and it has not panned out. It did not work out well at all.
That happened to me once, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I realized it probably was once.
This morning.
I would tell you that there's a secret handshake known only among those of us who have fallen clear through the floor. So failure is not necessarily a bad thing. Failure to achieve whatever, or failure in your career or whatever, those are just stepping stones. Those are things to overcome, and you will be greater on the other side.
Absolutely. It's one of those that when you view it as perhaps that was an experiment and that didn't work, and that it's moving you toward where you're supposed to be, that's a good thing. And that you want to embrace that, and that's okay.
Norman, thank you.
Thank you, Norman.
Rene, this is a good comment, by the way. I'm just going to mention this. So if you're on Facebook, if you want your name to show up on the question screen, you do have to approve that. And that's what Rene is mentioning here. You don't have to do that on YouTube or LinkedIn.
Someone said hi at 12:55, and it shows up to us only as Facebook user.
Yeah,
we're not sure who said hi, but we did try to say hi back.
Hi, yes. Facebook user.
Hi, Facebook user.
So we're trying to lead you down the right path here. So the leadership motif here. Rene, final comments, final thoughts.
I was muted. I was talking.
Well, we missed those final thoughts.
Can you repeat those thoughts?
I feel like we could do this whole topic again another time, because I had plenty to talk about in that segment, and so easy to burn up the clock. But I had a full career in project management and across different industries. So, and I grew from job to job, and I had new perspectives from job to job. But I don't know. I could talk about this topic for a while. I love leading people. I don't really do it anymore. I don't have any
Renee, you do it every freaking day. What are you
Yeah, you
talking
do.
about?
You really do. Yeah.
People love the way you lead them on about Chief Architect and
So,
all the cool things
yeah.
you do. So you're leading, you don't even know it. Come on, dude.
I was thinking the same thing.
Nice.
So but that's
yeah,
kind of what we're all
you know.
here to do.
And then, I mean, half the show I wasn't paying attention because I was trying to make this stupid squirrel.
Yeah, but it was impactful when you finally used it. So, you know.
Squirrel. We do have
Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed the talk, and I hope everybody else did too. So thanks for joining us, and maybe we can pull off another one of these conversations one day. And maybe Jen will join us again. Maybe we'll just let Rene just ramble on.
Or maybe all of the above. Who knows? So,
Thank you all
Thanks,
for
everybody.
having me. This has been a blast.
Jen, if you just want to hang on, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to everybody. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.